The galaxy was vast, a sea of stars and planets, each with their own story, their own power. Some races had conquered hundreds of worlds, their influence stretching across the cosmos like a shadow. Among them, Earth had been little more than a whisper, a small blue planet lost among billions. But in that silence, one moment would ignite a fire that would change everything. It all began in a small, peaceful corner of Earth. A child, no older than 7, sat in the middle of a forgotten field. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. To anyone who might have looked, it was a peaceful, ordinary day. But for those who knew the truth, it was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The child, named Aiden, was human, but not just any human. Aiden had a gift, one that no one understood, especially not the alien races who had been watching Earth in secret. To them, humans were weak, insignificant, a species they could easily wipe away if they needed to. They had no reason to fear the people of Earth. Until now. In a dark, cold room aboard a massive spaceship, a group of powerful alien leaders made their decision. They had been watching Earth for years, calculating, waiting. The child, Aiden, had unknowingly crossed their path, and that to them was a crime too great to ignore. Aiden had been at the wrong place at the wrong time, or so it seemed. The child had stumbled upon something, a relic, an ancient artifact buried deep beneath the Earth. The aliens didn't know its full power, but they understood it was important. And so, when Aiden found it, it was enough to catch their attention. They couldn't allow something so powerful to fall into the hands of a human, especially one so young. The aliens sent their forces, swift and silent, to erase the child. They didn't think twice. To them, it was a simple task: eliminate the threat, and Earth would go back to being the insignificant, helpless planet they had always believed it to be. Aiden never had a chance. The child's last breath came not in a battle, but in silence. No one would ever know what the child truly discovered, or why it mattered. The alien forces descended upon Aiden without mercy, leaving nothing behind but a lifeless body. The moment the child's heart stopped, a ripple of energy surged through the universe, unnoticed by most, but felt by a select few. Far away, on Earth, something stirred. A deep, ancient energy that had been dormant for centuries. It was as if the entire planet had felt Aiden's death. It was a cry, a call, one that would soon echo throughout the galaxy. The alien leaders were pleased with themselves. They believed they had done the right thing, that they had removed the one threat to their power. But they were wrong. As Aiden's body lay cold, something unexpected happened. The energy the child had unknowingly awakened began to spread, far beyond the alien ships that had caused the death. It reached Earth, and from there, it spread like wildfire, sending a message to every corner of the galaxy. Humans were not to be underestimated. The universe, vast and indifferent, had no idea what was coming. The death of one child, an insignificant being in the grand scheme of things, had set something in motion that would change everything. The alien leaders thought they could get away with it, that they could snuff out a single human life and erase any consequence. But they had made a mistake they would soon regret. As the days passed, the humans on Earth began to feel a strange sense of urgency. It was subtle at first, just a feeling, an instinct deep within their bones. But as more time passed, it became clearer. Something was changing. Something was coming. The governments of Earth scrambled to understand the sudden shift. Reports came in from all over the world of strange occurrences, anomalies, glitches in technology, whispers in the air. But the most pressing issue was the sudden surge in energy readings from deep space. Someone, was reaching out. At first, they didn't know who or what it was. They didn't understand the power at work. But the aliens did. The ones who had taken the child's life, who had wiped out the last remnants of humanity's innocence. They felt the disturbance. They knew the shift had begun, and they knew they were responsible. They feared what they had awoken, but they didn't fully understand it yet. The ripple that had started with Aiden's death was just the beginning. The child's last breath was a signal to something far more powerful than anyone could imagine. And the universe would soon find out just how wrong they were about Earth. What the aliens didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have predicted, was that killing Aiden, a child they thought to be powerless, had set in motion a series of events that would lead to their greatest regret. The universe would soon learn that there was one thing no one could underestimate: humanity's power when pushed to the edge. The galaxy, once peaceful and divided, would soon be united by a force far more powerful than any alien race could comprehend. The price of one child's life would be more than the galaxy could ever afford. And so, as the sun set on Earth, a new chapter began. One where humanity would fight not just for their own survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. But no one knew yet, no one could even begin to guess, how much the galaxy would change from this moment on. The death of one child had set the galaxy on fire, and soon all would burn. The universe was a cold and indifferent place. Across galaxies and star systems, alien species fought for dominance, conquered worlds, and erased civilizations. To them, the lives of humans seemed insignificant, just another minor race among countless others. But they had underestimated the one thing they could never account for: humanity's will to fight back. After the brutal death of Aiden, Earth's response began to build, not in the way the aliens expected, but with a quiet fury that spread like wildfire. The child's death did not go unnoticed. Earth, once seen as a vulnerable and unimportant world, began to stir with an energy and unity that had not been felt for centuries. The first ripple of this awakening was subtle, just a whisper in the air, a strange sense of connection that swept across the planet. The day after Aiden's life was taken, strange reports flooded in from every corner of Earth. Governments, military organizations, scientists, and ordinary citizens began to notice something strange. Power grids began to malfunction, satellites flickered, and technology seemed to be on the brink of collapse. At first, it was dismissed as a series of strange coincidences. But as time went on, it became clear that these were not just ordinary glitches. In the heart of Earth's most powerful nations, the most brilliant minds worked feverishly, trying to make sense of the events unfolding. What they didn't know, what they couldn't comprehend, was that the death of Aiden had triggered something ancient and powerful within the planet. The energy Aiden had accidentally awakened, the relics buried deep beneath the Earth's crust, had set something in motion that could not be undone. The child's death had been the catalyst, and the ripples were spreading across time and space. By the time the first signs of the true power reached the aliens who had initiated the massacre, it was too late. The forces they had unleashed upon Earth were already beyond their control. They had believed they could crush a mere child, erase a life without consequence. But now, the universe was watching, and the consequences were just beginning to unfold. The alien races who had watched Earth with disdain began to feel the stirrings of something they had never expected. A message was being sent across the stars, one they could not ignore. It wasn't a message of peace or negotiation. It was a message of vengeance. On Earth, people began to understand that something greater was happening. As the disruptions in technology grew stronger, the greatest minds of Earth's top scientific and military forces gathered together. They couldn't explain the energy surges or the strange signals emanating from deep space, but they knew something important had happened. The world's brightest scientists began to work together, pooling their knowledge, trying to decode the mysterious signals. And then a breakthrough came. It wasn't just a signal. It was a call to action. The relic that Aiden had discovered, long hidden and forgotten beneath the Earth's surface, was more than just a relic. It was a beacon. It had been waiting, dormant, for the right moment to awaken, and Aiden had unknowingly triggered its activation. The moment he died, it sent a pulse throughout the galaxy, calling out to humanity's lost potential, to the deep power hidden within the very fabric of Earth itself. As Earth's top military leaders studied the strange data, they came to a startling conclusion. What had been set in motion by Aiden's death was not just a defensive reaction. It was a power unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The time for hiding, for playing by the rules of the cosmos, was over. Earth was not just a defenseless world anymore. It was a force to be reckoned with. The aliens who had ordered Aiden's execution had no idea the storm they had unleashed. They thought they could erase a child's life without consequences, but they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The entire galaxy now stood at the brink of change. Back on Earth, the energy was palpable. Ordinary citizens began to feel a strange pull, a sense of unity and purpose. People from all walks of life, from all nations, began to work together as never before. Governments that had once been divided now united in a common cause: revenge for the child's death and for the future of humanity. In a hidden military base, deep beneath the surface of the Earth, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, constructing weapons, defenses, and systems that had once seemed impossible. They were harnessing the very power that had been awakened by Aiden's death. The ancient relics were not just artifacts. They were weapons, and now they were humanity's greatest advantage. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth, in the cold depths of space, the alien forces who had executed Aiden began to receive reports. They had underestimated Earth for too long. Now, their mistake was becoming clear. The technology they had thought they could control was no longer under their command. Earth was waking up, and they had no idea how to stop it. The galactic powers who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant now faced an uncertain future. Earth was no longer the weak, fragile planet they had thought it to be. The spark that had been ignited by the death of one child was now a fire that could not be put out. As humanity prepared to strike back, the galaxy trembled. What the aliens didn't know was that Earth's vengeance was not going to be swift or merciful. It would burn through the stars, consuming everything in its path. What had started as the death of one child had now become the beginning of Earth's revenge, and the universe would never be the same again. The energy that had begun with the death of Aiden was now swelling, growing stronger with each passing day. What had once been a mysterious signal became a guiding force, pulling humanity into an unprecedented unity. People who had never spoken to each other, much less collaborated on something so immense, found themselves joining hands. The fate of Earth was no longer just a matter of surviving. It was about avenging a death that had ignited a fire deep within the heart of every human being. Across the planet, governments and militaries had already started mobilizing. But what they had not anticipated was the unexpected alliance that was forming between the various nations. Rivalries and old grudges were put aside as people began to realize the magnitude of the power that had been awakened beneath their feet. The hum of ancient technology beneath Earth's crust now pulsed with life, calling out to humanity with a force that could not be ignored. Earth's brightest minds were working around the clock. The relics that had once been buried deep below the surface were now being brought to the light of day. Scientists and engineers, some from places once considered enemies, began working side by side to unlock the secrets of these mysterious artifacts. They had no clear idea what they would find, but they knew that their very survival depended on it. Every test, every experiment brought new discoveries. The ancient relics were far beyond the technology of any civilization they had encountered. It was as if the remnants of an ancient and long-forgotten race had left behind a weapon, one that had been hidden and protected for a reason. Aiden's death had woken something that no one could have prepared for, a power so great that it could level entire star systems if used with purpose. The first sign that Earth's plans were already taking shape came in the form of strange, unexplainable phenomena. Satellites that had once been under the control of the alien invaders began sending signals that no one on Earth had programmed. They were broadcasting across galaxies, a subtle reminder that Earth was not the defenseless world it once was. Those who had thought to wipe out a child's life as though it were nothing now, found their actions being reflected back at them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the newly formed United Front was already drafting a plan for what would come next. For the first time in human history, there was no hesitation. There were no questions. Earth's vengeance would be swift, and it would be devastating. No longer would humanity cower in the shadows, afraid of the galactic powers that sought to erase them. Instead, Earth was ready to make its mark on the galaxy. Across the globe, the first of Earth's new weapons was being tested. They were not just conventional weapons. This new technology harnessed the energy of the relics, powered by the deep currents of the Earth itself. The ancient relics provided a foundation for the development of weapons that could manipulate energy, bend gravity, and even affect the fabric of space-time. The Earth's military forces were now equipped with technologies that defied the laws of physics. But it wasn't just military strength that Earth was developing. It was the human spirit, the will to survive, and the desire for revenge. For centuries, humanity had been small, isolated, and weak in the grand scheme of the galaxy. But now, after Aiden's death, everything had changed. People fought for something far greater than themselves, humanity's future. In the depths of space, the alien forces who had orchestrated Aiden's execution began to notice strange fluctuations in their systems. Their ships, once invincible, now malfunctioned at the edges of human space. Their surveillance systems began to flicker, capturing images of things they could not explain. Something was happening out there, something they had never expected. Their greatest mistake had been underestimating humanity's power. They had thought that killing a single child would silence Earth, but they had awakened a beast, one that was hungry for justice. The universe had already begun to feel the tremors of Earth's response. The aliens had not only lost the child, they had awakened something far worse, something that would make their entire empire question whether they had made the right choices. As Earth continued its preparations, an undeniable tension began to fill the air. The alien forces were now gathering, preparing for an invasion they had hoped would never come. They believed they could crush humanity with their superior firepower, their superior technology. But they did not understand the true nature of what they were facing. This was not a war between armies. It was a war of ideals, of survival, of vengeance. And humanity was ready. Earth was no longer the fragile, helpless planet it once was. No longer would it bow to the whims of the powerful empires that sought to dominate the galaxy. Earth's strength was not just in its new weapons, it was in its people. The loss of one life had united an entire world, and in doing so, they had become stronger than any empire could ever imagine. As Earth's forces prepared to launch their counterattack, the universe trembled. No one knew what would come next, but one thing was certain. The cost of killing one human child was greater than anyone had ever imagined. The universe would soon learn just how deep Earth's power truly ran, and how far they were willing to go for revenge. The countdown had begun. Earth's vengeance would soon be felt across the stars, and there would be no turning back. The tension on Earth had reached its breaking point. Every corner of the planet hummed with activity as the final stages of preparation for Earth's vengeance were set into motion. The world was no longer divided. People who had once seen each other as strangers were now united by one singular, unshakable purpose: to ensure that no other life would be lost in vain. The very future of humanity depended on their resolve. In every major city, governments, military leaders, and scientists worked in perfect harmony, their collective focus unwavering. The planet's resources were pooled together in a way that had never been seen before. The entire global infrastructure had become one massive machine, working toward a singular goal: retaliation. The weapons that had been developed from the ancient relics were nearing completion, and their power was incomprehensible to those who had created them. But they didn't need to fully understand it. They knew that these weapons would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Earth's leaders spoke of the coming war with one voice, uniting the various nations under a banner of strength, justice, and survival. What was once fragmented in the world was now a singular force that would not bend. The deaths of innocent children, like Aiden's, would no longer go unpunished. And this time, Earth would not stand by in silence. The alien empires that thought they could erase human life with impunity would feel the full weight of Earth's wrath. In space, the first of Earth's newly designed ships were launched into orbit. These ships were not like any the world had seen before. They were massive, armed with weapons capable of tearing through entire fleets. The hulls of these ships were crafted from materials that had never been used in warfare before, making them practically indestructible. They could withstand any attack, and they carried weapons capable of shifting the very balance of power in the galaxy. Each ship was equipped with energy cannons that could bend space itself. These weapons would have the power to create singularities, miniature black holes capable of swallowing anything in their path. The technology that powered these ships was still experimental, but in the hands of Earth's finest engineers, it had been brought to life with devastating efficiency. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the alien empire that had caused this conflict began to realize the gravity of their mistake. The first signs of Earth's new military power were becoming apparent. Their ships had encountered strange, unexplainable forces that made it clear Earth was no longer the weak and isolated planet it had once been. There were whispers in the Empire, rumors of strange disturbances in space, of their own military vessels malfunctioning, and of mysterious signals being broadcast across their territory. The aliens who had thought that the death of a child would not matter had vastly underestimated humanity's capacity for vengeance. What they failed to understand was that humans were not driven solely by survival instincts. They were driven by love, by the desire to protect those they held dear, and by the deep-rooted need to stand against injustice, no matter the cost. As Earth's forces gathered for what was sure to be an epic confrontation, the sense of impending war gripped the entire planet. The people were not afraid, but rather, they were resolute. They knew what was at stake. The leaders of the alien empire, who had considered themselves untouchable, would soon find themselves staring into the face of a new power they had no hope of defeating. It was a force that could not be bargained with, nor reasoned with. It was a force born from the deepest recesses of human will, the desire for justice. The first massive fleet of Earth's ships made their way to the edge of the galaxy, where the alien forces were waiting. Their military leaders had begun organizing a defense, preparing for the invasion they knew was coming. But even as their fleet gathered, the reality of the situation began to set in. They were not ready. Their technology, their weapons, their strategies, all of it seemed like child's play compared to what Earth now commanded. They had killed one child, and that death had unleashed the full fury of a species they had once considered inconsequential. On Earth, every heart was pounding. The countdown had begun. In mere days, the alien fleet would feel the full force of humanity's anger. Earth's ships were ready, their weapons charged, and the minds of every person on the planet focused on one goal: revenge. No one knew exactly what the outcome would be, but they all knew one thing for sure. They were no longer the underdogs. The universe would soon witness a power unlike any it had ever seen before. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity rose from the ashes of their own tragedy, ready to bring an end to those who had dared to extinguish the light of innocence. But the question remained, would Earth's new power be enough to turn the tide? Would their weapons, their resolve, and their fury be enough to defeat an empire so vast and powerful? The answer would soon be known. The day had arrived. Earth's mighty ships, now fully assembled and armed with unimaginable power, floated in orbit, their engines glowing with anticipation. The countdown to launch had begun, and as the final seconds ticked away, every human across the globe held their breath. The pain of the past months weighed heavily on them. The grief over the death of one child, the grief over what had been lost. But it was now channeled into something far greater. A collective desire for justice. A storm was coming, and nothing would stop it. In the command centers, military leaders and strategists, both old and new, stood together, their eyes fixed on the screens ahead of them. They had seen the data. They had seen the technological superiority of the alien fleets. They knew they were not just fighting for revenge. They were fighting for their survival, for the future of the human race. But despite the odds stacked against them, the people of Earth had something their enemies did not: unity. A fire burned in every heart, a fire that had been ignited by the death of an innocent child. Earth would not fall. From the darkest corners of space, the alien empire watched. They had learned of Earth's technological advancements and its preparations for war. Whispers spread across the stars. The empire had underestimated the humans. Yes, but now they were sure of one thing: Earth's retaliation would be catastrophic. What had once seemed impossible now felt inevitable. But it was too late. The first wave of Earth's ships, a massive fleet led by the flagship Vigilance, moved swiftly into enemy territory. They were a sight to behold, sleek yet imposing. Their energy shields flared to life, rippling with power. Each ship carried within it an arsenal that could obliterate entire civilizations. These ships were built not just for war, but for a message. Humanity would no longer be a silent, passive species. They would stand up for what was right. As Earth's fleet made its way toward the heart of the alien empire, the tension in the galaxy was palpable. There was no turning back. The alien forces were organizing their defenses, sending out warnings, and preparing for the inevitable clash. Their commanders scrambled to adjust their strategies, but they were already too far behind. The human ships were faster, their weapons stronger, and their resolve unbreakable. On the surface of Earth, millions of people gathered in city squares, in homes, and in places of work. The news had spread across the world like wildfire. The time for revenge had come. There were no longer any nations. There was only one people, one planet, united in their desire to make the galaxy feel their wrath. The human race had been underestimated, and now the universe would learn the true cost of that mistake. As Earth's ships advanced, their energy weapons powered up. The air around them seemed to hum with an electric charge as the battle was about to begin. The alien fleets, which had once been the dominant force in the galaxy, now found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. A species that, despite its relatively young existence in the universe, had harnessed the power of vengeance like no other. The first exchange of fire was a blur. The energy cannons of Earth's ships lit up the void of space, sending beams of destruction toward the alien vessels. Explosions tore through the enemy's defenses, ships disintegrating before they even had the chance to retaliate. The alien forces, shocked by the sudden assault, scrambled to respond, but their attempts were futile. Earth's weapons had been designed specifically to break through their shields, to pierce their hulls, and to obliterate their forces. The battle raged on for hours, but it was clear from the outset that Earth had the upper hand. Alien ships that once moved with confidence were now in full retreat. Their commanders, who had once believed they were invincible, now found themselves caught in a web of humanity's fury. In the heart of the battle, the flagship Vigilance remained at the forefront, its weapons dishing out destruction at an unimaginable scale. The humans had brought their very best to the fight, and their resolve could not be broken. The aliens had not just attacked a random planet. They had attacked a species with something more powerful than just military might. They had attacked the human spirit. The leaders of the alien empire watched in horror as their fleets were torn apart. The destruction they were witnessing was unlike anything they had ever expected. The galaxy had never seen such fury, such pure, unrelenting vengeance. The death of one child had set this chain of events in motion, and now the Empire was paying the price. As Earth's forces continued to tear through the alien defenses, the rest of the galaxy stood frozen. On countless planets, civilizations watched in stunned silence as Earth's message rang out across the stars. No one, no empire, no force would ever harm humanity again without facing the consequences. Earth had crossed the threshold. And so, as Earth's ships surged forward, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never forget the day when humanity's vengeance turned the tide of the universe. The Empire had made a grave mistake, and the cost was far greater than they could have ever imagined. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity stood tall. They had fought for what was right, for those they had lost, and for a future where no child would ever have to face such horror again. Earth's vengeance had not only shaken the galaxy, it had changed the course of history itself. The war was over, but the echoes of its destruction would resonate throughout the galaxy for eons. Earth had delivered its vengeance, and the alien empire was left in ruins. Their once glorious fleets were nothing but debris, floating lifeless in the void. The death of the child, the spark that had ignited this unrelenting storm, had cost the Empire more than they could have ever imagined. The survivors, if there were any, would forever remember the day when humanity rose from the ashes of grief to burn the stars. Back on Earth, the silence after the battle was almost as deafening as the roar of war. The planet, though victorious, was left to process the unimaginable cost of the conflict. Families, once united in mourning, now stood together in a shared uncertain triumph. They had avenged the child, yes, but at what cost? Entire fleets of alien ships had been destroyed, leaving behind thousands, perhaps millions, of dead. Yet no one could deny that their message had been heard, loud and clear, across the universe. Leaders around the world stood together, united in their resolve. They had all witnessed the devastation, the incredible power that humanity could unleash. But as they watched the destruction in space, there was no sense of pride in their victory, only a somber realization of the consequences of their actions. What had been necessary was also tragic. They had won, but their souls would carry the weight of the loss for generations to come. The survivors of the alien empire, those who had once believed themselves invincible, now scattered across the stars, fractured and broken. Their once proud fleet was gone, their authority shattered. They had made the fatal mistake of underestimating humanity, and in doing so, they had awakened a force that would forever haunt the galaxy. Earth had shown them that there was a price to pay for cruelty, a price that could not be avoided, no matter how vast the empire. And the galaxy, once a place of strange and distant powers, now stood at a crossroads. The humans had proven that they would never again be passive observers. They had shown the universe the depths of their anger, but also the strength that came from their unity. The war had revealed the power of vengeance, yes, but it had also shown that humanity, in its grief, could rise to unimaginable heights. As Earth recovered, there were no celebrations, no loud cheers in the streets. Instead, there was a quiet reflection. People knew that they had paid a heavy price for this victory. The child's death had caused so much pain, yet it had ignited a spark that would forever change the galaxy. The reality was sobering. War had never been the true answer, but sometimes it seemed the only way to make the galaxy hear the truth. Humanity had made it clear. No one would harm them again. No one would make them feel weak. They would never again be forced into the shadows. They were the masters of their own fate. But despite the victory, humanity's leaders knew that this peace would be fragile. It would take more than just defeating one empire to guarantee their future. They needed to rebuild, to ensure their power was not just in their weapons, but in their hearts and minds. The fight for their survival had changed the way humanity viewed the universe. No longer would they see themselves as small and insignificant. No longer would they look up at the stars and feel weak. They were a force to be reckoned with. Across the galaxy, the surviving aliens began to whisper among themselves. The horror of what had happened to their fleets and their empire was still fresh in their minds. Earth's vengeance had been swift, overwhelming, and unforgiving. They had crossed a line, and the consequences had been far worse than they could have imagined. The question lingered: could any of them rebuild after such devastation? Would they ever again dare to challenge humanity? For now, humanity stood in a rare moment of peace. The galaxy was forever altered. Earth had proven its strength, its will, and its power. But beneath the triumph, there was still the reminder of the price they had paid. They had learned, the hard way, that sometimes the universe only understands one thing: the force of a people who have nothing left to lose. As the survivors on Earth looked out at the stars, they knew one thing for sure. They had made their mark. The galaxy would never forget the day Earth struck back. But there was still much work to be done. The war had ended, but the journey was just beginning. Humanity had shown the universe the strength of a single human life. And for the first time in history, the galaxy knew that Earth could never, ever be forgotten. The aftermath of the war left Earth with a bittersweet victory. The galaxy had learned a lesson in humility, and the cost of humanity's revenge was etched into the very fabric of history. The alien empires, once confident in their superiority, now looked at Earth in a new light. No longer were humans seen as weak or insignificant. They were a force, a powerful reminder of the cost of underestimating the will of the human spirit. On Earth, however, the mood was far from celebratory. Yes, the child's death had been avenged, and the galaxy had witnessed humanity's wrath, but the price of the war had left deep scars. Nations around the world began the long process of rebuilding. The victory had come at the expense of countless lives, and despite the overwhelming power they now held, the leaders of Earth understood the consequences of wielding such strength. The Earth's leaders convened, not to discuss the glory of their victory, but to figure out how to move forward. They had changed the course of history, but the future remained uncertain. There was talk of alliances and diplomatic negotiations with the remaining alien civilizations. Humanity had made their point, but now they needed to ensure that they wouldn't make the same mistakes of their past. They had to learn that power, while necessary for survival, was a double-edged sword. The galaxy's greatest regret was not just the loss of their fleets, but the realization that humanity was no longer just a species to be ignored. It was one that would shape the future of the stars. The leaders knew that humanity could never go back to being a passive, innocent species. The war had awakened something deep within them, a survival instinct that would forever alter their approach to the universe. But with this newfound strength came responsibility. They had proven their might, but they also needed to rebuild the relationships they had shattered in the process. The question that hung in the air was, how would they make sure that such a war was never repeated? In the years that followed, Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to create a new order, one that balanced strength with diplomacy. It was not easy. There were factions that wanted to maintain humanity's aggressive stance, to continue expanding and conquering. Yet there were others who called for restraint, understanding that their new power could easily turn into a curse if left unchecked. It was a delicate balance, and the fate of humanity rested on their ability to navigate this complex web of politics, alliances, and rivalries. Meanwhile, the surviving alien factions were left to pick up the pieces of their once mighty empires. They, too, had learned a painful lesson. The notion of their invincibility was shattered, and their leaders found themselves struggling to maintain control in the wake of Earth's vengeance. Some considered peace, others plotted revenge. The galaxy, once a place of vast empires and untouchable powers, was now a much more uncertain place. The universe, in a strange way, had become more unified, despite the chaos. The destruction wrought by Earth had forced everyone to rethink their position. Earth was no longer the small, fragile planet on the edge of the galaxy. It had earned its place in the stars, and it was clear that no one would ever be able to forget the day humanity made its stand. As for Earth itself, life began to return to normal, but the memories of the war lingered. The streets, once filled with mourning, now bustled with a quiet, somber optimism. People remembered the child whose death had ignited this unimaginable series of events, but they also knew that they could never forget the cost of the victory. The child's death had been tragic, but it had led humanity to a greater understanding of its own power and its own future. In the quiet of the night, when the stars above seemed to hold their breath, people would look up and remember. They remembered the wars fought, the lives lost, and the lives saved. And they remembered the child, whose death had changed everything. It had reminded them of the strength they carried within them, the strength to protect their own, and to ensure that no one, no matter how powerful, could ever harm them again. The universe had learned a painful lesson. The child's death had been the catalyst, but the price of that lesson was one that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Earth's vengeance had left its mark, and the stars would never look the same again. As humanity looked to the future, they knew one thing for certain: they would never again be underestimated. The galaxy might have been filled with powerful empires, but Earth had proven that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire that would change the course of the universe forever. The child's death had been the spark, and Earth's vengeance was the fire. And in that fire, humanity had forged its place among the stars, never to be forgotten again. Years passed since Earth's fierce retaliation had echoed across the galaxy. The stars themselves seemed to burn a little brighter, as if they too carried the weight of what had occurred. The galaxy was forever changed, but so was humanity. The cost of the war had not only altered the fabric of intergalactic politics, but had left an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of people on Earth. For the leaders of Earth, there was no return to the world they once knew. The victory, while absolute, had been costly. Entire cities had been lost, lives that could never be replaced were extinguished, and the scars of the war were visible both on the planet's surface and in the hearts of its citizens. Every moment of peace that followed came with the haunting knowledge that Earth had changed forever. It wasn't just the way humanity viewed itself. It was the way the rest of the galaxy viewed them too. Earth's once timid stance in the galaxy had been replaced with caution, strength, and the weight of a hard-earned reputation. People knew that they were now a force to be reckoned with, but what came with this new power? Leaders across the planet knew that the responsibility of strength was often more difficult to bear than the burden of weakness. They didn't want to lose their humanity. They wanted to rebuild not just their cities, but their souls. Diplomatic efforts were initiated across the galaxy. The war had left many alien empires in ruin, but some survived. Earth's representatives met with leaders from the surviving alien factions, not just to demand reparations, but to seek a new path forward. They had made their point. No one would ever again harm a human child. But they knew that a galaxy at war could not be sustained forever. They worked tirelessly, ensuring that humanity's future would not be one of endless conflict. But old rivalries were hard to erase. Some factions, bent on vengeance, secretly plotted against Earth, determined to reclaim their lost power. However, Earth had made it clear that it was no longer the weak and insignificant species they had once thought. Humanity had faced down the destruction of its people, and from the ashes of that tragedy, a new breed of warriors had emerged. They were no longer afraid of the stars. They had learned to survive in the fire. And while humanity's leaders tried to steer their people toward peace, there were those on Earth who longed for the glory of battle. Some were eager to prove themselves, to demonstrate that the wrath they had unleashed was not a one-time occurrence. The temptation to conquer was ever present, but humanity had learned a valuable lesson. A victory gained through violence was often hollow. The real challenge was to create a lasting peace. They could not afford to forget the devastation they had caused. As time went on, stories of the war began to fade into legend. The great battles, the victories, and the loss of the child who had sparked the flames of retribution were remembered not with anger, but with understanding. The world had moved on, but the memory of that day remained etched into the collective consciousness. Children were taught the story of the child whose death had changed the universe, a story that spoke not just of vengeance, but of the strength, resilience, and capacity for greatness that humanity held. There were still those who questioned if Earth had gone too far. Had they truly been justified in annihilating so many? But when the question arose, Earth's leaders would stand firm. They would remind the galaxy that the price of that child's life was the cost of a lesson, one that would be remembered across the stars for generations to come. The war had ended, but the battle for humanity's future continued. Earth's strength was undeniable, but they also carried with them a new sense of humility. They knew that with great power came great responsibility, and they were determined to use their newfound strength wisely. The universe was vast, filled with both dangers and opportunities, and humanity was prepared to face whatever came next. The child's death had set into motion a chain of events that could never be undone. It had brought Earth to the brink of annihilation, but had ultimately catapulted them into a new era of strength. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's fury, and though the fires of vengeance had burned bright, Earth's leaders knew that they had to temper their power with wisdom, lest they become the very thing they had fought against. As humanity moved forward, their place in the galaxy was secure. They would never again be underestimated. The stars had witnessed their wrath, and they knew that Earth was a force that could not be ignored. The child's death had been the catalyst, but it was Earth's response, the fire that had consumed the galaxy, that would be remembered as the turning point in history. The universe would never be the same again, and humanity's legacy would burn brightly, a reminder of the price of underestimating them, a price paid in fire, blood, and the echoes of vengeance across the stars.